Uh-huh. Hey guys, what the fuck is up, you guys? My name is emandan64 too, and welcome to the year-end videos of 2022. This year, I'm not only going to talk about the games I've played, but the movies and shows I've watched and the manga I've read. For a lot of these games, I'm going to eventually make their own videos about them, so I'll only talk about them briefly. I have a lot to talk about for this game, but I'll keep it short for the reason I just stated. This game is bullshit. It's unfair, it's unfun, it's annoying and frustrating. The fan remake, Redemption, does its best to fix these issues, but still the game was bad. The game does everything it can to give you the worst gaming experience ever. From every level to every boss, the game is unfun. The presentation and graphics are great, and it's one of the most memorable games I've ever played though. Super Mario Land is probably the most mediocre game I've ever played. The game wasn't very memorable. The platforming was okay, all around a decent game. Big improvement over the first. Nothing that great, but at least this game was memorable. It's one of the most unique Mario games with the odd worlds and the introduction of Wario. Still one of the worst mainline Mario games, but still an enjoyable experience nonetheless. I didn't really care for Dreamland 1, and I don't really care for Dreamland 2. It's an alright, decently fun game, but not that interesting. I like the animal friends, but the copy abilities are incredibly limiting. I have the same problem with all of the early Kirby games. Still a solid enough game. While this game may not be as bad as others make it out to be, this game is pretty impossible to play without a guide. I had to use an in-depth guide telling you exactly what to do and where to go to make the game even playable, which could really make the game horrible, but that's just the staple for these old-ass games. I like Zelda 1 and 2 and Mother, but they have the same issue. Simon's Quest is just the worst offender, by far. Aside from that, the gameplay is fine, the castles are okay, and the bosses kinda suck. The original Castlevania is somewhat better than the second. The big problem is the difficulty. This game is kinda bullshit. Even knowing which weapons are better to use and where to find secrets, the game is hard as balls. It's a good game for the most part, and I liked it enough. A lot of classic NES games. This game is really awesome. It's fun and exciting. It took me a bit to get good at the game, but it was still really fun. The one hit and you're dead thing kinda pissed me off in this game more so than later ones, but the game was still fair, unlike Castlevania. The last stage in this game was so cool. I'm a big fan of Alien and Metroid and sci-fi in general, so this shit made me squeal. This game is badder and asser than the first. It's pretty much the same game, but improved. I thought all the stages were better. I like the top-down stages from Super C much more than the behind stages, whatever you call them, from the first. The game felt shorter to me than the first. I think that was because I was better when I played this game. Also, the final stage was a bit of a letdown after the epic one from the first game. A big improvement over the first two. One of the best NES games, period. This game has branching paths and other playable characters. The stages are a lot better than the first. The bosses are awesome. The game is, again, really hard, but it's not bullshit hard. It's enjoyable and rewarding. A Metroidvania Kirby. This concept delighted me. I love Metroid, and I started getting into Castlevania, and I love Kirby. The execution was good. One of the more unique Kirby games. It is a Metroidvania, alright. There are 9 different worlds with a lot of things to collect. It's a neat game. Biggest problem is the copy abilities kinda suck. They went back to how they were back in the classic Kirby games. Playing with friends is fun, but it can get frustrating when you're not in the same mindset, and navigating can be a pain without a map telling you where things are. Another awesome Contra game and big improvement over the first two. This game is another solid shooter. It's bigger, faster, and excitinger. The top-down stages are kind of annoying how you move the camera, but they were still fun. The bosses were cool and I liked the final stage. The different endings were neat, but I didn't get the good one. The best of the Dreamland games. Obviously it would be. It's on the SNES instead of the Game Boy. Dreamland 3 has much improved levels and gameplay. I like the animal friends and copy abilities somewhat more than in Dreamland 2. The thing is, this game is kind of a backstep from the previous game, which is Kirby Superstar, released a year earlier, and a much better game. The presentation in this game is really neat looking. It has a certain picture book kind of charm that's hard to explain, but it's a very good looking game. More Kirby. This game is pretty damn good. The closest thing to a 3D Kirby game until Forgotten Land. This game is actually, it's really good. Great and unique worlds and levels, fun gameplay. It's another solid Kirby game. The main thing that sets this game apart is being able to combine copy abilities. The single copy abilities went back to the classic cringe style, and there are only a handful of them, but it's okay in this game. There were a lot of combinations. Some were really great and some kinda sucked, but most of them had good use. This is the first Kirby game that I have 100%ed because of the epic final level and boss you get once you do. Zero 2 is an awesome final boss with great music. This game should really be lower. The gameplay is lacking and repetitive, the combat is laughably brain dead, the levels are repetitive and somewhat boring. What makes this game so good are the great worlds and exploration. It's really fun to roam around finding secrets. There are so many planets, characters, and secrets, so much to find and explore. As a big Star Wars fan, this is amazing, but there are serious problems that bring the game down. I never got around to making the other Mario reviews after 64, but now I've played all the 3D games, so I'll make a video on those eventually. Galaxy 2 is a great sequel that expanded the gameplay from the first Galaxy. It introduces new mechanics and power-ups in Yoshi. Galaxy 1 has a better narrative and hub world, but Galaxy 2 has better and expanded gameplay, which makes it better in my opinion. I like Sonic, but none of the games have really wowed me and been that great, until Mania. While Rush is nostalgic and memorable, this game improves upon the classic games immensely. Very fun and fast-paced gameplay. Great zones and bosses. It's hard to say this, but this game is better than Rush. It's better than 3 and Knuckles. It's an awesome game. An actual game released this year. This game is a big step forward for Kirby. It's the first 3D Kirby, and a great one at that. It's exactly what I wanted from a 3D Kirby. The levels are all fun and the secrets keep the game engaging. It kept things familiar while making a new experience. The game played it a little too safe. It could have been more, but what we got was a great experience. And I wish there were more copy abilities. Only 12? I like that we could upgrade them, but it just made them slightly better and the designs worse. Still a great game and one of the best Kirbys. It took me a long ass time to finally play this game, but it was worth it. Another really solid game in the Ace Attorney series. The game takes place a year after Apollo Justice and follows Phoenix Wright, Apollo Justice, and the new character Athena Sykes. All great characters who add a lot to the story. The gameplay has been kinda upgraded again with the emotion detector along with the classic Psycholocks. Like every Ace Attorney game, not all the cases are great, but the first case sets up the story very nicely with the explosion in the courtroom. The third case has a lot of Athena lore and sets up the themes for the game, and the climax is really great, as always. Hell yeah! This game is so good. Great memorable areas, great atmosphere, great music, challenging bosses. This game has it all. I didn't expect the classic Castlevania games to be 2D side-scrollers. I expected them to be more like Metroid. While the first and third games were good, this game perfected the style. It's a thrilling, fun game. The best Castlevania I've played so far. The first good Pokemon game since Ultra Sun and Moon, 5 years ago. This game is by far the most unique mainline Pokemon game thus far. It's a prequel game set some 100 years ago before the main series. It's an open world game where the main purpose is to explore and catch Pokemon, and doing those things is really fun. The areas are expansive and fun to explore. There are a lot of Pokemon to catch and to battle, many Pokédex entries to fill out. There is a lot to do and it's all really great. The big problem in this game is the combat. Once you enter a battle, the game dips in quality. Battles are easy and not as fun. There are barely any trainers to fight. The campaign is enjoyable, but nothing that interesting for Pokemon standards. The climax is actually impressive and kept me very engaged, more than I thought it would. This was my first time playing the original Superstar all the way through. Superstar Ultra was my first game ever and one of my favorite games of all time. The original is not as good, but this game is still amazing. All the little games within the big game are great. There is so much variety. Spring Breeze is an excellent way to start out the game. It's a remake of the classic Kirby's Dream Land, but improved. The Great Cave Offensive is my favorite. I love the setting and all the areas. I love collecting all the treasures. Gourmet Race is a classic, of course. The game has so much to offer. The controls and copy abilities are greatly improved from the previous games, while adding many new fun ones. Another excellent game in the Metroid series. This game deviates a lot from the other Metroid games. How many fucking times have I said that this video? Including Prime 1. This game plays the same way as Prime 1, but the new main thing is the Dark World, which is a parallel world to the Light World, but with different enemies and minor differences which allow you to explore where you couldn't in the Light World. In the Dark World, you constantly take slight damage. There are healing light things that slightly heal you. It can get annoying standing at these lights until you heal, but it balances the world more. The other big difference are the new beams you get. There's no ice beam or plasma beam. You have a light beam and a dark beam, which work for certain enemies and objects. They are cool, but they have limited use and getting ammo isn't always easy. So most of the time I ended up just using the basic power beam. The structure of the game is also different. You need to find these 3 keys for the main 3 areas, and later the 9 keys for the last area. I enjoyed the game and all the areas a lot, so I didn't mind this much. I thought the game was well designed, so it was still fun and rewarding. It was the 9 sky keys that bothered me. I ended up using a guide because I couldn't find them all. Aside from those problems, this game is really great. The planet is cool, and as always, the exploration is really fun. This game is fantastic. It's grown on me even more since I've played it. It's now one of my favorite games of all time. It's a sequel to 9 Hours, 9 Persons, 9 Doors, which I played last year. That game has also grown on me more since then. This game improves upon almost everything from that game. The new thing with the chromatic doors in AB games is great and more fleshed out. The gameplay is more prevalent and better. The narrative is fantastic. Amazing story. Watching it unfold through the endings kept me on the edge of my seat constantly. Finding out about each of the characters, unraveling this big mystery, everything is so greatly done. The two things I think are done better in the first game is the soundtrack and the atmosphere. I thought the ship setting worked for the foreboding presence and as a ticking time bomb. Whenever someone died in that game, it felt shocking and unnerving. In this game, after so many playthroughs, it starts to lose its edge. Another kind of problem in this game is the ending leaves off abruptly. The climax and everything leading up to the ending is fantastic. So much plot and lore, it's really amazing, but it just kind of ends. I can't say it was bad or anything close to being bad, but honestly, I wanted to see just a little more. I had the same problem with 999, but this game is much deeper and has much more going on. So it's much more of a blue balls moment. For brand new games I've never played before, this is number one, but I'm counting every game I played this year. Last year, I really enjoyed Persona 4, and as expected, I really enjoyed Persona 3. But this game shocked me and improved upon my expectations. Persona 3 has a much more grandiose story with a lot of lore. It was a far cry from Persona 4's murder mystery. Tartarus and the Dark Hour were really interesting. The dungeon was much better than Persona 4's in my opinion. It made this game a lot more enjoyable. The big thing that was worse than Persona 4 are the social links. This game introduced them, so it makes sense they are rough. I still enjoyed the game all the way throughout. The characters are great, every full moon event was great, and the bosses were challenging and fun. Similar to Persona 4, the real important stuff happens in the second half. The themes and emotions of the game are conveyed very well. The game is spectacular with an amazing story and gameplay. It's a long game, but the journey was worth it with a very meaningful ending. This game is as amazing as I remember it being. Near perfection of a game. Amazing gameplay with fun and memorable dungeons. The great 7-year time skip mechanic, the simple yet endearing narrative. The game still impresses and holds up as one of the greatest games of all time, 24 years later. The transition from 2D to 3D works seamlessly in this game. The gameplay is amazing. I've always been a huge Zelda fan since I played Ocarina of Time 3D back in 2013. I love the setting of this game and the action-adventure gameplay. It all works so well together. Each of the dungeons is interesting and exciting. I like them all a lot. Even the water temple I like. Switching between the regular and the iron boots does get annoying, and going up and down the levels to change the water levels gets more annoying, but that's where my problems with this game ends. This is my favorite game of all time. I loved it when the 3DS remake came out in 2015, and I love it even more after playing the original. This takes the amazing gameplay from Ocarina of Time and improves it even further. Majora's Mask is much more plot and theme heavy than Ocarina of Time, or of any of the Zelda games. This game takes place in the underground country of Termina. Skull Kid stole the Majora's Mask from the Happy Mask Salesman, and it granted him incredible powers. Skull Kid used that power to force the moon to fall within 3 days. The entire game takes place within this 3 days time span. You need to play the Song of Time to keep going back and start the cycle over again. It's a really cool and unique concept, and it's used perfectly. It forces you to resource manage, but it also gives weight to your actions, because the things that you do and the people you will help will all be reset. The whole game has a dark and depressing atmosphere to it. Each of the 5 main areas represent the 5 stages of grief. It's all very meaningful. From start to finish, the game has such great imagery and meaning. Link falling down the tree and walking down that twisted hallway. You've met with a terrible fate, haven't you? The moon being the terrifying face on the outside, and the inside being this beautiful grassy plain with a single tree. Everything about this game is perfect. It's the best Zelda game. The dungeons are all great, the side quests are the best in any video game I've ever played. They have such depth and character to them. This game shows the true imagination and vision of a development that was rushed and cut short. And that's the 2022 game list. Like I said, most games I didn't talk too in-depthly about, but I plan on talking more about a lot of these games in the future. Plus, I wanted to get these end-of-year videos out of the way because I'm making more of them this year. Next one will be ranking of the television shows and anime I watched. Get the fuck out of my room, I'm playing Minecraft. E-Man Dan 64 too. You again? What are you? We used to be friends and now and why are we getting into this drama and stuff and yeah. Come again? Ah!